This is Ana García from Temblores Publicaciones. We are today going to talk about a book called The Liquid Gates of Time, which is a catalog of the exhibition of the same name, shown at Rubin Center for Visual Arts at the University of Texas, El Paso. Here we have curator Kate Green and the artist working on the show. I'm just gonna go and present them all. So I'm gonna read for a slight second. Okay, so artists work at the intersection of border ontologies, reconnaissance, and the end of the epoch of brutal violence in Latin America. The artists have centered their study in production on the northern Mexican region, disrupting images that reflect upon surveillance and historical material. Their research results in a series of installations and objects that speak of the ruptures still present in such territories, as well as the oppressive dynamics that have emerged among mineral, animal, human, and plant life forms into submission. In the desert and elsewhere, investigating memories of the future and the radical conditions of the present. And Kate Green, oh, wait a second. Kate Green is a curator, writer, and educator, a senior curator at the El Paso Museum of Art from 2018 through 2020. She advanced the museum's engagement with art and on the region, stewarding acquisitions of works by Beatriz Cortés, Virginia Jaramillo, Teresa Margolles, and Leo Villarreal, and developing programs and exhibitions that featured Cecilia Álvarez Muñoz, Animales de Poder, Andrea Bowers, Cruz Ortiz, and Postcommodity, including After Posada and the 5th Transborder Biennial. Green has directed the Museum of Contemporary Art Tucson and Marfa Contemporary, led curatorial and education efforts for ArtPace, and worked at MoMA PS1 and the Art Foundation. Green's writing about art regularly appears in Art Forum, among other publications. Her 2019 book with the artist William Cordova on their exhibition project in Marfa was published by Dancing Foxes Press in 2019. Green holds an MA from the Center for Curatorial Studies, Bard College, and a PhD in Modern and Contemporary Art History from University of Texas at Austin. Thank you all for being here. Just to do a quick presentation of Jesús Villalobos and myself. We are the team working at Temblores Publicaciones. Jesús Villalobos is publishing manager and I am editorial director. And again, thank you all for taking part in this virtual launch of the book. And well, I don't know if you, Jesus, want to mention something before we start, or if I just go on.
No, you can go on. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
So, just for starters, I think it would be nice to go where it all began. Kate and artists, I think it would be nice if you could perhaps talk about and hear if Jesus perhaps can help me share
the presentation. Yeah,
those shots exactly. I think it would be nice if you guys could talk about the exhibition. I believe there are certain challenges that were crucial for the show to happen. So I think it would be awesome if we could hear some of that.
Thank you, Thank you, Ana and Jesus, and everyone who's tuning in. I would love to hear from the artists who have been longtime collaborators, and I began conversations with them fairly soon after I got to El Paso, and we worked on a couple of things together. And then this exhibition project, this opportunity came up, and I would love to hear from the artists what their thoughts were when we began talking about this, about the idea of doing an exhibition in this particular space at the University of Texas at El Paso. What your conversations were with each other.
Okay. first of all, like back to the beginning, as Anna was saying, this comes out of an anti-ethnographic turn or reading on the events, situations, and phenomena of the border. So it really tries to push the idea of a conception of time that is unrestrained. When we think of the border region, specifically that area of northern Mexican region, or as Heyman and Campbell call it, the Southwest North American region, we think of experiments that have wrestled with the possibilities of time. So we think of the atomic bomb and the transuranic waste, for example, that has been deposited into the desert, eviscerating all life forms or shifting their capacities. So for us, it was important to speak of this dimension in which time, in some extent, might still be ungraspable. For us, the museum institutions, are tied to this taxonomic development of all life and separation of life forms. Therefore, we consider that to be a capturing possibility of its existence. We therefore try to find mediums in which we can escape these naming processes, and therefore try to find labyrinths in which the way knowledge is particularly erected in these spaces of expiation. And we're talking about like two distinct realities, like separated by space when we refer to the border, but at the same time, we're speaking of the particularities of Ciudad Juárez in specific. So the time in which the exhibition develops as well has to do with this space of suspension in which the world enters. This space in which only a form of thinking in these exempt, or to put it in these contingent and or emergency states of thinking, to put it in like Agamben terms. So this is the only possibility where we could be integrated into the museum space. If these rules were already being under tectonic questioning, and therefore, our existence could be manifested with that chain of events and reactions. This is why, we have this very inconclusive and ongoing relation to the art world in general, but also to our own place in the world, I think. I don't know, maybe that.
I'm curious, do you mean, you suggested like the world being in this, you meant the world in a state of exception because of the pandemic, or you meant specifically Juárez, El Paso, was happening in Juárez? You said the context, this moment allowed this moment, you referred to this moment and a state of exception. So what did you mean by that? Or can you elaborate?
Yeah, for us in that specific reality, which is Ciudad Juárez, the state of exception has been applied already. So it supersedes the temporality of the world's appreciation of contingency. So we are already living in that state of quote unquote emergency. Mm-hmm. But with the development of the pandemic, and this appreciation of contingency and emergency became catalyzed globally. So I'm speaking both in the sense of the pandemic existing in the globe as the particularities of the state of exception existing in the hyperlocal, and how these two communicate. I mean, if we wouldn't have that other space of suspension in which the planet entered, would our discourse be even relevant? You know, the question is not if the planet listens or if the planet speaks a particular language, but the question becomes like, why is the planet's tongue so deafening for us to listen, you know?
And how, so listening, tongue listening, how does the choice of working with a sign, which is what we're looking at here, as working under a sign rather than names, and you two having worked together before with under different names, how does that relate to that kind of process of, or that engagement with crypsis? How does it relate to what you were just saying?
Well,
those conditions.
Right. So when we started thinking about using the sign, I mean, it's a decision that's been through us by a long time now. But when we started thinking about like maybe taking away these crossing axes that might compromise the work and the idea, I think whatever previous names we had already had like this history behind them, and within that history, they also had like this type of judgments or something like that. So we didn't want the ideas to be compromised by it. We wanted to leave a clean slate for the ideas to grow by themselves and not be grounded by who we might be or might not be.
I mean, and any naming process in particular in the art market, I mean, obeys rules of speculation. So once you flirt or stumble upon this notion of like namelessness, and which is also I mean, a repudiation, you know, of our so-called original names, which aren't original. I mean, what lives in a name, and how are you supposed to engage with ancestrality in a peaceful manner when the context is not peaceful, and it's a context where warfare is imminent, even in an intravenous manner. I mean, what does a name mean in these contexts? So it's also mainly it's a resistance to the speculation of what would be considered like a promise in art or whatever, and it's we're trying to find a method of being elusive to the grappling and coercive nature of art. I mean, if we're thinking of liberatory exercises, then we have to begin with like questioning the limits in which art may wrestle or may not, and we are already uncomfortable for that inclusion, you know. This is why I think it's related with this process of the pandemic, and why it wouldn't be there in another situation.
Mm-hmm. You use the word liberatory, you know, in creating the works for this exhibition, assembling them. There's mining of your past works, which already mine images and archives. There's mining of archives that you've long engaged with, of new archival material that you all came in contact with through the research for this project in relationship to the university. There's mining of signs and symbols that stand for, are charged symbols in relationship to this space, this southwest of the northern hemisphere. So can you talk a little bit about the mining that's happening in this exhibition, which for those who haven't had a chance to see it, took over a space and you know, one large rectangle with a room carved into it that you see on the right there. And the walls for this exhibition painted strategically in certain areas, black and yellow.
Yes. Well, we began the process of questioning like UTEP's archival practices and going into both the UTEP's special collections with the help of Claudia Rivers, but also UTEP's collection of objects in their museum that is more tied with ethnography and not as much with art. So after dwelling inside these spaces, we started to question the ways in which some objects were existing in that space, but also maybe the ways in which the objects were acquired and the lack of just put it somewhere, just put it in museum terms, the lack of transparency which these objects fail to demonstrate. So once those objects were visited and recognized, and we approached the situation of configuring the objects in order for a narrative to emerge. And we find processes which, like this image, have to do with the period of colonization directly in our realities today. But we wanted to approach that in the terms of, like, for example, Ngugi wa Thiong'o's decolonizing the mind first, no? How a colonization operates, like within the mindscapes and mind frame, and therefore these reconfigurations of plant life, animal life, and mineral life, and also the emergence of mysterious objects which the archive holds, which are in the form of this armor. So the theme of the exhibition particularly has to do with the figure of the cockroach and how the cockroach arrived to the Americas as a byproduct of colonization, how it arrived through the pathways of the colonial enterprises, and how the cockroach in itself was an animal that in its early naming instances, lucifuga would mean to escape the light, to escape transparency, and the relation of the cockroach with the shadows, with filth, and with elements that are considered to be degrading and therefore this relation for us was attractive, because in our instantiation of thinking, we appreciate these elements of degradation in terms of a particular life form thriving in opacity, and opacity being a true formation or a true basis for true diversity. It is in opacity where life forms can conjure and can think together and think with the world. It is not through transparency. That is what we're implying here.
Yeah, I think one of the decisions you asked maybe in the beginning, what was the decision that we took to actually work with an institution? It was precisely to sort of infiltrate and unbound or unbind, open the gates and uncross certain things that have become known as knowledge, or have been signified by knowledge by the institution, and at some point by the outside, and sometimes it's also even being consumed by the inside also. So by opening the gates, I think, and mining the archive, I think these narratives become like lost in a landslide, or become unbound from their unidirectional narratives of past, present, and future, and become diluted in the exhibition, but also in the ideas of the exhibition.
I think just by listening you all, there is a thing. I mean, just like you were talking about, like all this rethinkable possibilities towards all life forms, and there is like a concept that you have been bringing to the table constantly, both Kate and you and the artists, towards crypsis, and I think it would be interesting to hear you around the idea of what would it mean to mirror the idea of crypsis, or not even the idea, but to actually embody crypsis when it comes not only to mine the archive, but also when it comes to serve within this art system that tends usually to capitalize most artworks and so on. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to ask that.
I mean, the question of crypsis, I mean, has to do with, for the lack, and this is for the lack of a just for the lack of mere knowledge existing in that sphere. But I mean, it could be also the use of secrecy for particular indigenous saberes, or ways in which they are also ergonomizing with this instantiation of earth. But for the lack of a better word, I mean, there's the use of the term crypsis, which is also, I mean, an appropriation of scientific or biological studies, and that has to do with the way in which species blend or hybridize with the environment in order to escape this grapple that we were talking about. It is a defense mechanism in which a species can retract from being in the world and become and become the world, so to speak. So I think once there is this this stance of crypsis as a defensive model against every ontological form of existing or being in the world or with the world, then crypsis becomes much more echoed in every distension one has with not only with the environment, but with the disciplines one is involved with. And we start seeing potentials that exist in language, but are not particularly valued in this moment. A moment where the digitalization of the world is polarizing the world into hyper-specific categories. Then this realm of silence and this realm of nonviolent and so we embrace this principle with without the inferiority complex, but without the superiority complex as well, and without the equality complex, I think. This is why in the question of the jail, for example, is relevant. I mean, what are these tools useful for? Like, we think they're only applicable in the abstract realm in which art has allowed itself to partake in rules and design its own rules and its own discourses. But when we think of the existence of still of a carceral industrial complex, we start seeing that these methods of dissolving time have a real application, and how for those that are captured physically, how the ability for the ideas to not be captured, how that becomes a particular possibility.
I think I think I have been, I mean, since I first encountered with this images, there's a recurrent image that comes to my mind where I mean that has to do with the idea of time capsule, of a time capsule, and I just find it very interesting to see, like, at some point all these archival materials encounter with us I mean, as if they traveled in time, or as if we traveled in time, or who traveled in time, you know, in a way that would be an interesting question, I'd say. But what I do find interesting, just in line with what you were saying, is that in a way it does generate, like, revisiting archives and I mean, this approach of you guys to mine it does bring questions of how and I mean, just like talking about also the idea of the cockroach, and when it comes to history, in a way, to me, it brings up like a switch of perspectives, or the possibility to imagine different perspectives, and to embody or embody and at the same time reappropriate of a marginalized image in order not only for surveillance but also to within the system imagine the possible cracks within it. So I mean, just to comment on what you were saying, I don't know if perhaps Kate would like to add something towards the show. I don't know.
I think like maybe as a way to segue from the show to the book, one notion that we haven't talked about that you brought up a little bit, Anna, was the question of futurity and how that is, you know, you all began when you were speaking here today about timelessness and time, bending time. So how does futurity, how is that functioning? What's happening with that?
Well, I mean, to go back to what Anna was saying first, is the moment that we are also existing in that particular material reality of Ciudad Juárez, I mean, has, or northern Mexico in general, I think has to do with a crisis of representation. That is why I think it's important to situate ourselves like in this anti-ethnographic turn of critique towards ethnography and anthropologic, and also art representation in these landscapes and timescapes and so on. So once that counter image is proposed, you know, once that edification of an anti-image is created, which I mean cannot fully also be reproduced, I think. Then comes the question of futurity, and the question of futurity is tied to mestizaje, at least for the way in which I'm thinking these things, and mestizaje being the a force of utter destruction, of extreme violence, and evoking this principle of that Foucault would call counter memory, that would erase the past in order for it to have the possibility of existing, because the past is so brutal and so charged that it has no other way to reconcile itself but by this means. However, mestizaje being as well a true weapon of diversity, or a true instantiation of diversity in terms of its hybridizing possibilities. So when we think of the singularity, for example, and or the digitalization of life, in the ways in which life is being condensed through these taxonomic processes, I mean, that is also a process of mestizaje, in which life transferred into an algorithmic capacity can therefore be exploited for a later for a later existence, or a later model of more sophisticated oppression. What we're thinking in these terms as like, and the relationship with the Recon archive has to do with this process of hybridization and blending with the human with the object, or subject and object. And I know this question is already very treated in philosophy and in a critical thinking, but it nonetheless still is grappling or wrestling with the notion of posthumanism.
Another thing that I think it's quite relevant when it comes to your work related to the idea of building history through institutions, or what keeps being written and what doesn't. In that sense, I think these works do remind, and just to start to create this way towards the publication, I think it's quite interesting, yeah, to I mean, personally, to me, the act of mining archives, mining history has been I don't really know how to name this, but like your processes, your work have been in a way opening gates to what those actions could be, or what would it mean to mine memory or politics of memory. I would in this way like to move forward to the publication, just to go specific artworks, specific statements that have been already made for an exhibition space. But I mean, I do find it super enriching to create this dialogue when it comes to the book format. And again, our approach as a publishing house, we do try to shape the book in a way that keeps this constant dialogue with the artworks, with the artists, with the curators, and the other researches that have been made around the things we're talking about. So I think this is no exception. I'm gonna share now the like some spreads of the book, which is basically the whole PDF. So anyhow, I feel like it was, I mean, as soon as we saw all the install shots, it was undoubtedly that color had a super strong presence, right? So in a way, I mean, we saw, as you mentioned, Kate, specific walls in black, specific walls in yellow, but there was also pinks, like bright pinks, and some other blues and so on. And it was like a massive contrast. And as soon as we also were seeing the files within the Recon archive, we were like, okay, we have, I mean, in a way, it soon became important for us to bring that colorfulness to the table. So we went on that specific way. And a thing that I find very, very important is that we also were using most of the, I mean, just talking about how the usage of images, we try to use the archival materials, like the UTEP's archival materials, as bridges between texts. So you will see along the publication like several images when it comes like to the, as I mean, they work as transitions in between texts. So there's that. And well, we also tried to go with this liquidy look and some sort of like what we have been naming for forever, glitches when it comes to the book, which are like, you will see, but these are in a way like how we try to replicate certain conceptual perspectives by the artists. So I'm just gonna move this because I don't really know. Anyhow, so well, the book is, most of our books are in both languages, English and Spanish. Here we have, this is no exception. All contents are fully in English and in Spanish. Here you see all, some of the images and so on. But I wanted to start firstly with Kate's text, which is a little bit. We'll go forward. Sorry. So this is Kate's text. I wanted to start with this because, in a way, as we were talking about the show and so on, I felt, it's just like bringing, I find it very interesting because this was this particular project had a specific timing. The show was open, for some time, but the book is going to be launched in a different time. And to me, it was just interesting to hear or to point out all this like revisiting of the curatorial ideas and concepts that were crucial for the show, to go back to those writings. In a way, we know a bunch of the possible readers of this book might have not seen the show, and we wanted to give a little impression of that. So I feel like it's very powerful to have like this constellation that Kate does around certain specific artworks and so on. In the section, we have like a special, it's a little bit yellowish in order to replicate or put into dialogue like the yellowness of the show, as you can see. And here is the part where you can get to know the install shots and some specific works that Kate talks about and so on. Just to share it like quickly. And another important thing, as you might be noticing, is that we try to work with the idea of borders, like visually talking, as to create some sort of like portals, like how the text is justified throughout the whole book has to do with a specific mirror-like presence where English and Spanish coexist. And it's depicted through color. Like there's like this gradient that goes from pink to black. And I found it. We thought it would be, in a way, just a graphic way to play with the idea of a portal. Anyhow, so just to move forward, I also. I don't really know if Kate wants to add something. I'm sorry for this monologue, but I don't know if Kate would like to add something to that section of her text. I'm just gonna go back just in case you want to. Here I am.
I don't know that I have anything to add. I think it's a particular experience of an exhibition to write about it, writing about an exhibition before it happens, which often happens with catalogs, is a very different experience than writing about it after the fact. So I feel really privileged or glad to have the opportunity to have some distance to formulate that. I think that distance allows for a kind of distillation of ideas that don't fully come to be once they're in person, of course, since we're working in the realm of objects and experience and how we experience those objects. And so in writing about this exhibition, it's very much drawn from my experience of the objects, having known some of them before the exhibition, but most of them not. And having experienced them. Maybe I'd heard about them, but didn't experience them. And many of them didn't come into being until the exhibition. So having the chance to write about them after having experienced them together in that space drove their meaning for me, and advanced their meaning for me, or charged them in a way that I wasn't clear to me until I both had the chance to experience them and then also write about them, because of course that's, going back to these conversation around archives, writing is a form. I mean, an essay on something that's happened is another form of archiving, and telling my story of, putting into words, or putting into, something that won't go away potentially, my version of what these objects, archives, gestures mean together. And their breadth for me was quite overwhelming once I did have that chance, and their relationships to each other expanded in my mind as I articulated why I was drawn to certain images, and relationships between the images and the objects, and so the degree to which the project intervenes into the past through these moments of these kind of portal-like moments, like the one that was just on the screen showing a photo, an archival photo alongside, or in this case, armor from found in an archive, with this text written by the artist against this yellow background. The degree to which all of these moments come together to intervene and critique and expand our understandings, or intervene into the way we often understand the space, people, things, landscape of this particular border space. It was overwhelming in a really rich way. So yeah.
Yeah, also adding that the exhibition had like, well, it was at the middle of the pandemic, so it has like 3 exits. I understand, no, Kate? Like this virtual demo that you did, well, the museum did about it, and now the book. It's like something that I was thinking is like, this is there has been a lot of returns to the exhibition, no? Because I don't know, the presence of it can happen in the way that you believe it could, no? And that's something also that we start talking at the beginning of our conversations. Mm-hmm. So only to add that.
Yeah, this other the book being the third iteration, and I would add to that having been in conversation with the artist for a couple of years, that it's just this continual iteration. This is a specific project that revolves around or iterates or brings forward certain specific ideas, but is very much part of a larger practice and constellation of ideas. So for me, it also feels like a continual iteration of that began maybe in conversations, and we worked on something else together, and then continued in this project, taking this form, and then the book becoming another form of that, another opportunity to kind of focus on certain moments, or certain specifically around, I suppose, as is evident in that Glissant quote, the opacity, questions about opacity, and which the book, I think, also then it takes on, it adds to with the glitches.
Yeah, that's another thing I also wanted to mention, because on the other section of the talk, because yeah, I mean, the concept of opacity became also crucial for the building of the book, knowing that, of course, for you and for the artists, it was kind of another tool or strategy conceptually, both, and also, I mean, both conceptually and factically, in order to generate discourse. So in that same way, I thought it was important to mention that we did try to bring that to the book towards the glitches, which, if I mean, perhaps we might just go right away to those here. I mean, another contribution which I find very, I mean, it's just like, I think when it comes to this with a catalog, I mean, I think it's just like super important to try to add a little bit of background to certain themes that have been displayed within a show or by an artist and so on, and to have like another voice besides curators and artists to expand that those topics. I find it pretty, I mean, it is in a way what adds a little bit more of again, context, right? So in that way, I think it was like a super nice idea of you, Kate, and the artists to invite Josiah Heinlein and Howard Campbell to write this contribution on the drug war in the border. And there, I mean, it is, I mean, in a way, it's text that just to go, I mean, not to take a much more, I mean, time, but I think I mean, the powers of this text have to do with this timeline that they both draw around the policies and politics that create this environment of illegality around drugs, how it's also crossed by raciality, and how it also addresses violence. And just, I mean, you know, in that sense, I find it, because in a way it gives like factual information for the images that we are seeing. On the other side, we also thought that there were, and just as I was saying a few minutes ago, we wanted to keep replicating different strategies by both Yurdas and UK when, I mean, for all the curatorial decisions taken in the space and so on. And we really, I mean, I think again, right, the act of mining narrative to us became eventually pretty powerful, and we thought in a way it would be interesting to replicate that idea to certain specific paragraphs in the text of these professors. So you will see some parts of it that are or that have been glitched just in order to destabilize the reading of these contents, and to stimulate in a way that the possibility of radical imagination when it comes to hegemonic narratives. It is in a way a small gesture that we have found in order to again destabilize history destabilize the gaze in how we approach what has been said, what has been written, and how can we, as I was saying again, how can we inhabit inhabit all the cracks in history. So
Also,
that was in a way the approach. Sorry, Jesus, you were
No.
about to say something.
no, sorry. No, also I was thinking in this crisis of representation that the artist was talking, and I don't know, the text it is narrating about narrates about the border drug war. No, the concept of drug war. It's how this crisis of representation has been named. No, and how can we approach to these titles of history? No, and I like a lot this text because this confronts with the other text, no, with the first text and the different sites that are and how this crisis is reading in with different perspectives. And maybe these glitches want also to make that evidence of disorder of the narratives, of how we are reading and how we are understanding the narco or the drug war, and how we are, I don't know, something that I love about the images was that at first when we start reading them, they are, some of them too violent, you know, like thinking in the archive and thinking in narcofuturismo. Well, in the recon archive, sorry. Sometimes approaching to them, I feel weird, no? Like it's something that we read sometimes in media, know how these images are appearing, like the violence of some of these images, and the thing that I think it's very interesting is in these iterations and in the repetition of the images, you start to see a glitch. You start to see something is changing in that violence, no, and how you are reading that images.
You, the artist, could talk about the process of the book for you all while it's getting sorted, or what you how you're working, how the ideas became iterated differently as you were thinking about it in book form.
Yeah,
because books are something you all have worked with before, created yourselves, and so how are you thinking about it with this particular one?
I mean, we're thinking of the actual existence of like a book or a product in this form is would rather play as an error for our own practice, because now with time we see, I mean, the book isn't even out yet, but we see how maybe the idea of having a book plays. We don't see like the actual benefit of having a book produced for. We had always thought of books as appendixes to the work, and books to have their own narrative capacities. But once we think in a book that re-enters the like the public space, or re-enters a mysterious passage which books have in their lives, or the question then becomes like okay, what is the contradictions that arise of having a book when we are presenting an anti-ethnographical proposal, and and what are the benefits of having a book out there, which I don't see. I mean, we are very enamored, of course, with the idea of bookmaking in our own practices, but we see also the fallacies that come with producing a book, which at the end of the day only becomes a way to weaken your own position, because it somehow catalyzes the moment, or catalyzes the prejudices that exist in that particular time. Yeah. So for us, for example, with this archive, I mean, it was important to grant another layer of opacity to the archive, and therefore treat it with a dignity that rarely occurs. We see this turn in art to go towards the forensic promise of illumination, or we encounter objects and masks of indigeneity, you know, and we encounter masks or objects of a past that is not threatening anymore for the particular institutions that bear these objects, and we see them there exposed without filters, without the respect or without dignity. We have objects that require initiation, for example, or require processes of the individual that comes confronted with that object to be initiated before having that object speak to the person, and we have them captured in their captured and prisoners in specific institutions around the world, and we don't see is the type of objects that we were presenting in terms of the armor, for example, which is for us, I mean, just a logical sequence of this new warrior, the techno-agricultural warrior as well, that is present in these narco configurations. But for example, the presence of the armor in itself, the armor from the period of the conquest, which has, of course, no literature around it, because these objects are not supposed to be under the scope of transparency. These objects contribute to the conformation of transparency in itself. Therefore, these objects exist in a realm where in a realm where when exposed, they have to fall under very specific glorification montage or very specific glorified forms of showing these objects, which is not the case with the other objects that can be all crammed into sections. You go to the Metropolitan Museum and you see this idea of Africa, Asia, Latin America, Oceania, like all conglomerate in the same section, or the Africa, Asia, Australia section, you know, and then the Americas section, and when you come upon these objects of European warfare, then this is supposed to stand by itself, as if they were manifestations of the world in a primal state, equal as those of sacred associations. You know, not to say that war does not have this association with sacrality, but in the specific human decision of placing objects of war and objects of oppression under or over, better said, and dignified, then I mean, there's a question. I mean, why are these objects treated that way, and why is the rest treated as it currently stands? So I mean, for us, that opportunity to have that object, which is speaking not only of that history of obliteration, elimination, but also of our own history, you know, that cannot be superseded or whatever.
And
Here you have an example for here in this image. You have a something that I mean, for me, tied this production of the image in the border of a spectacularization of violence. So how, when not only the world sees us, but also how we view ourselves, like how the center views the north, or how it is always with this connotation of a spectacular image of violence. And we have these already early formulas of this spectacle being reproduced not only in the imaginary, but in the arena itself. I mean, it's a beautiful analogy or a beautiful metaphor to see the physical arena where ideas are confronting each themselves. You have the spectacle of a lion versus a bull. So you have two mega species of aggressiveness confronting each other to see which will be the ultimate predator or defender of territory. And you have these spectacles. I mean, early on in the post-revolutionary period, you have these events. You would have tigers versus lions, bears versus tigers, etc. Bulls versus dogs. All these spectacles that would conform the optic and the eye and the gaze of the viewer. Not only the tourist viewer, which these spectacles were created for, the American viewer, or the upper class viewer coming from the global north, but also for the passive viewer, and how we watch, how we see reality, and how we contest antagonizing forces and blood spectacles and witch trials and so on, you know.
And even the most recent example is those widely, you know, and the commercial nature of this spectacle, you know, the most very recently circulating images of U.S. Border Patrol people appearing to whip back Haitian trying to cross the Rio Grande from a different border context. But I wanted to ask you to return to what you began with saying, which was a skepticism about the book form. And if you can say a little more about it, are you suggesting that this you now feel that the book form reifies these questions rather than questioning them, or can you say a little more?
I feel the book form catalyzes a moment that I don't know if it should be catalyzed or not. The moment you mean is the exhibition, the experience with the objects and images in person. Is that what you mean? No, sorry, what?
You said it catalyzes a moment which you don't know should be catalyzed. What is that moment that you're meaning?
Yeah, that moment of the exhibition, that moment specifically of the train of thought, you know, and sometimes I think, I don't know if it's a boycotting nature of like this idea of decolonizing the mind, you know, how ideas are not to be respected by us, even in those even with the possibility of their stagnation. I mean, you have always this idea that that thinking has very particular formulas in which it can be stagnated. I mean, we see the text of Heyman and Campbell, and that of course falls under that, but there are other languages that are occurring here that I don't know if they should be restrained or contained in a book, because also these formulations of books are also, I mean, a product of the moment of Aufklärung or illustration period.
But wouldn't, by the same logic, then an exhibition restrains them? Any gesture restrains them.
Completely, yes, completely. But I mean, the question is there under which tools do you desynchronize the deadlock? I mean, you can, and we're using the same tools here. I mean, we're deciding to not speculate on the name. I mean, that is a political stance. So it's that for us helps mitigate in a way the
crisis.
No, it helps mitigate for us the actions that come or the consequences that come after our flirtation with stagnating.
I mean, I think I super agree with what you were saying. I think this is like a massive question every time we do either an exhibition, a book. In a way, it has to, I mean, it creates a legitimate space for practices, or I mean, not even artistic practices, but rather aesthetical practices that we're not, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is like the all-time question, right? Like how to socialize all these images and situations without instrumentalizing them, right? Through artistic like tools, or which are mostly exhibitions or books, right? That's kind of why and I mean, personally, I mean, for both Jesus and I mean, this is like a question, I mean, as bookmakers in a way, right? Like how to, I mean, yeah, like what would be the ethical or the most ethical way to portray this thoughts, this knowledges, this images, this constellation of ideas, images, and so on, right? In a way, that's kind of how, and now that we are in this, I mean, in the beginning of the book, this is why I think, and it's like in a way nice that it became the last thing we're talking about, which is your text, right? The text by the artist. I mean, the way I see it is like, for us, it was very, very important to start with this text, because in a way it becomes some sort of manifesto that situates the reader, both yourselves and the reader, in order to be critical about the contents, and not only about, I mean, it's not like an introduction. I mean, it is not. It is like some sort of like, again, like I don't know, like a cathartical perhaps moment, you can say if I'm wrong, right? But to liberate in a way, or to situate and liberate what you're about to see, what you're about to read, and to in a way recognize how, I mean, this question, right, for institutionality and how it can be disrupted. So in a way, I mean, this is not, of course, going to save the world, right? But it is in a way, me saying that that text is placed right in this position or anything, right? But in a way, it opens up the possibility to shake the structure, or as I see it, of course, right? So, I mean, I just wanted to add that to move forward conclusion of our talk. I mean, of course, everyone can say or comment.
I was just going to add, like, thinking about what these various registers do, you know, exhibition in relationship to ideas, you know, exhibition, and in relationship to forming new ideas, exhibition, virtual exhibition, book. And and I think that, you know, each of them can do work in creating new ideas or in liberating pathways of thinking, if the endeavor is not towards representation. You know, if the exhibition isn't just simply replicating or representing an idea, if the book is not simply replicating or trying to represent the exhibition or the object. So while each iteration or each space may foreclose or may make static some ideas, if it is doing its job well, then it's opening up different ideas, new ideas or new pathways. So, and I think that this book, like thinking about, you know, the different voice of the text, the different voices of the text, and the treatment of images and combinations of images and words that were not part of the exhibition, and then the graphic editorial gestures also of glitches and so forth, you know, do that open up different pathways, you know, may close some down, but I think do open up new ones, which is what I hope for in a book. And I would call it a book, not a catalog. For myself, I think about it as a book, not a catalog, which I'm much more interested in a book than a catalog.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I think it has to do also with understanding trying to read the powers of each device, being either the exhibition space or the book or the virtual exhibition space in this case. And yeah, to see, I mean, each one of them offer several different tools, and yeah, agreed with the idea of rather than trying to replicate the same in each of them, it is about perhaps to understand what are, yeah, exactly, like the powers of each device, in order to expand the discussion, I'd say. And yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for that comment. I think it was super nice. I don't know if would this be like the closure of our book launch, or are the artists wanting to say something else, or Jesús?
No,
Nope.
really.
Okay, well, thanks a bunch for you all again for being here, for doing this book with us, in like with several kilometers apart from each other. We are super happy to have this book on print as soon as possible. If you are in Printed Matters Fair and you are still here, get the book at the fair. And well, thanks everyone for for this collaboration, which I am personally very, very happy about.
Thank you, Ana and Jesus.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you both, and thank you, of course, to the artists for bringing us together around these ideas and discussions.
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks
Ben.
everyone.